And welcome back to another episode of Tech Pro Unicorn Podcast. I am your host, Michael Graves. Today, we're going to be talking about culture. We're going to talk about personal branding. We're going to talk about careers. And we're going to do that today with Limor Bergman Gross. She has been a mentor for women in tech for over 5 years. She's a former director of engineering. For over 20 years, she worked in tech as an engineer, a manager, and a director of engineering. She's always been passionate about supporting women in technology. She knows firsthand how it is like being a woman in the male-dominant field and all the challenges women face in the tech industry. 2 years ago, upon her return to Israel after 9 years in the United States, she decided to follow her calling and support women's career growth. The women she works with tell her that working with her enables them to continuously tear down the ceilings by challenging them to think bigger. They also comment that she's opened their eyes to an entirely new way of contributing to their careers, which we're going to talk about. The women that she works with can achieve goals in about a third of the time that they thought it would normally take them. As we talk to her, you can follow along at home if you'd like on her website, which is limorbergman.com. Link will be down below if you're looking at show notes. So, Limor, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us here on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for the warm introduction.
Awesome. Women in technology is such a cool topic, right? I've had the pleasure of working with just amazing women in technology, both as colleagues. I've had the opportunity to lead women in technology, and I've had the opportunity to have bosses, right, that are women in technology that have just been inspiring. They've been some of my best leaders. Talk to me a little bit about your journey, how you went from kind of being a director and such, and now you're really more on the coaching side, helping other folks achieve success.
Yeah, sure. So I started as a software engineer. Basically, I started my career. I didn't know anything better. I went and studied computer science because I thought that's what I was meant to be, because I was good at math. So taking you a little bit backwards. And then at some point in my career, I decided that I actually like working with people and I wanted to become a manager. And that's what I did. And after that, I grew into senior management and director of, engineering positions. But somewhere along that way, I felt that although I was successful and I was good at what I did, I felt like that's not my calling. That's not what I am supposed to do. However, I had no idea what it was. So... and also I'll add to that I started mentoring about 5 years ago. Some company approached me and asked me for mentoring engineering managers. I started doing that and I found out that I really loved it. I loved mentoring and I still do that till this day. So that was one thing that happened that kind of eventually directed me towards what I'm doing today. So when I returned here, as you mentioned, I got back to Israel after 9 years in the United States. And I decided, because I'm moving all my family, I have 4 children and I'm married, and because we're moving everyone back home and it's a big adjustment for everyone, I might as well just make an adjustment or changes in my career. It felt just right. It feels like the right timing.
That's awesome. That it's such some of the things that you help folks with, both women trying to navigate a career in technology, but also we're in this weird phase where, in a good way, right? Companies are focused on things that we probably always should have been focused on. So diversity, inclusion. Sometimes, companies, I think, want to do the right thing, or people, leaders and managers want to do the right thing. They know that cultural diversity is important. They know that inclusion is important. but they don't really know how to do that, right? It sounds good, but they're like, how do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have some tips on how companies can build that inclusive culture.
Absolutely, yeah. So there are multiple facets. Usually, companies start with hiring. Usually, that's where they start. That's how I started. And with hiring, it gets tricky because you want to hire people, not just women, but you want gender diversity. And in general, you want to have diverse talent pool because that's where everything starts unfolding. When everyone is the same and you just hire one offs, obviously it will be very difficult for them to feel included. And that was me. I was working for many years as the only woman in the room. Sometimes I was not the only one, but I was a lot of times I was the only
Right,
one, or maybe there was someone else. And that felt very lonely. And that made a lot of times very difficult for me to feel like I belong. So I think first it starts with having diverse talent pool. And it's hard. I will be open and transparent about it. It takes effort. And I think the challenge is one of the challenges is everyone talks about it. Not so many
hmm,
companies actually do something about it. And by doing, I'm meaning not just putting effort, but sometimes it's putting money. For example, when I worked at DigitalOcean, I wanted to hire women. And the recruiting team was really struggling, giving me diverse talent, giving me women and, underrepresented talent. So I stumbled across Power to Fly and I wanted to start working with them. It cost money. And DigitalOcean decided it was important enough to invest also the money. Not always it's related to money, but I'm just saying you have to take actions, not just
right,
talk about it.
right. I think that's such a key thing, right? I always say it all starts with hiring, and who you hire. Uh, that's the first step, right? And so it's a great reminder to really look while you're in that hiring phase to make sure that you're hiring diversity, right? Both in gender equality, but also in in your 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 nationalities that are potentially there. I know a lot of companies um, that have had really great success. At first, they were very resistant to like sponsorship, but then as they went into it, they said, "Oh, it's really not that expensive." And oh my gosh, the talent that opens up, right? Investing a little bit of money really got them some amazing talent that otherwise just looking locally or looking even within the
Hmm.
U.S. Didn't bring them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it also about understanding that you have different people from different backgrounds, and you need to be sensitive around it. You need, first of all, it's awareness, right? So I'll give you like the simple example. If I'm the only woman and everyone is men, so they need to understand that maybe the way they talk between themselves, I may not find myself fitting in. If all they talk is about football, then I may not feel included. So I'm not saying that they have to talk about feminine stuff all the time, but even just the awareness, having the awareness that there are
Yeah,
different people from different cultures, and how do you make them feel like they belong?
I, I, I think that's such an important reminder. I happen to be RPI is a very large company, but here in Phoenix, we're a relatively small office, and we tend to be we're all guys right now. There's only four of us, but we're all males, right? So we come in and we talk about the sports over the weekend. I said, man, as we hire, we really have to get some diversity in here, and it will, I think, change what we talk about. Right? We will be for sure more receptive to not spending 10 minutes talking about sports, right? Especially if this other person that maybe joins isn't into sports. just making them feel comfortable, right? In especially in small offices, I think you become like a family, right? And
Yes,
you become almost like brothers and sisters, and you want to include them, right? You want to make them feel welcome and a part of the discussion and talk about things that they're able to contribute to.
absolutely. Yeah.
Such a such a great reminder as we are in the great, at least in the U.S., right? We're in the great resignation, or coming out of this. The COVID pandemic has created this weird shift in our workforce, and a lot of folks are now in a hybrid work environment. Maybe they're working part time at home,
Hmm.
or they're working entirely at home, especially in tech, right? Now tech has moved from being mostly on site to mostly off site. We have all these remote teams now, and that's a challenge for leaders that are used to having folks they can physically stop by, they can talk to. Now those folks, they don't see them oftentimes for really long periods of time, yet they're managing them. What are some strategies maybe to help folks manage these remote workforces?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work remote since 2016, way before it
Wow,
became a norm. Actually, I was offered a remote position at DigitalOcean to manage remotely, and I didn't even think it was possible. I was, questioning that myself. It
right?
takes deliberate effort, as you mentioned, because everyone is remote and you cannot just walk next to someone or grab a cup of coffee. You need to be intentional about it. So, for example, as I was managing people, I was making sure I have at least 30 minutes per week with each one of my direct reports. And to be honest with you, sometimes some of the engineers didn't like that. So, "Oh, I don't have anything to with you about." But uh, it was important for me, even if it's just for 5 minutes, just to touch base and see how are you doing, what's going on, just to check that everything is okay. Even if there is nothing for them to talk with me about, that's fine. And be intentional, care about people, about what's going on in their lives, because a lot of times, because you're not near them, you don't know what's going on. And maybe some people are going through hardships and you have no idea. And then you may see some changes in their performance at work and you're starting to make different conclusions. Oh, you know, they are not making an effort or whatever. So you need to really be intentional, curious, and not make assumptions.
I love it. I always say, right, spending as a leader, you're sure you're supposed to, increase productivity and increase all these metrics. But the most important thing as a leader, I feel, is the privilege to lead people, right? Is the privilege to inspire and motivate. And you can't really do that if you don't spend time with them, if you're not talking to them or communicating with them. I love the 30 minutes a week, even if it's just earmarked, right? Maybe you don't need the full 30 minutes. Maybe you only need 5 or 10, or maybe they have a lot going on and a lot of questions and they need some help and such. And you do need all 30 minutes. Having just that time dedicated to them, to me, shows that you care, right? That you're invested in them, that you really want to be, a resource for them, and that creates a trust. I think that's really important.
Absolutely, yeah. There are also some cool tools. One of the challenges that I hear a lot of people talk about is how do you build culture, right? I mean, how do you get people to connect, not just talk about work,
Right?
right? In offices, it happens more naturally, but when everyone is remote, especially if they've never met, it's much harder. So one tool, for example, it's called Gather Round, and you
Hmm.
can do it also in Zoom and others. It allows you to do like some social huddle, in a cool way. You can structure it around different topics, and it automatically pair people up, and they have few minutes to talk about a topic. It can be random, I don't know, cooking or whatever you want. So
Right?
it's a little bit maybe artificial looks from the outside, but it provides some structure to help people open up on a more personal level and not just talk about the next milestone at work.
I love it. Yeah, at RPI, right, we're super proud of our culture. And part of our culture, if you looked at our Teams channels, Microsoft Teams, which is just like
Mm-hmm.
Slack, there's all these channels, right? We have a channel called Food Porn, right, which is sounds inappropriate, but it's really not. People post all these cool things that they made, right? All their dishes. We have we call it the Drinks channel, right? People post cocktails that they've invented. We have a pets channel where people post things about their pets, and none of this has anything to do with work, but it has everything to do with people sharing things that are outside of work and building culture and building connections between people.
Yeah, for sure.
It's awesome. As people, this pandemic that I hate to always say, right? When you get to the talking about the pandemic, you're like, people are like, the pandemic's over. I'm like, the pandemic's not over. We've just grown tired of it, I think, and are trying to move on. But during that pandemic, people did a lot of introspection, right? And I think a lot of people took time to look at themselves and said, how do I get better? What are things that I can do? Online education went way up, which was great. LinkedIn Learning went way up. As people tried to essentially make a better version of themselves, right? Personal branding was also another big topic. As people went through the Great Resignation, maybe were looking to switch employers. They really looked at, how do I present myself in an online sense, or how do I present myself to prospective employers? What are some tips for folks that are looking to improve their brand, right? Their personal brand.
Yeah, definitely. So I started doing that when I moved to the US because I really needed to find a job and I knew no one. But
Mm,
and it took me years, right, to perfect that. But basically, first of all, the people I work with, and I help also people with personal branding on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is the place, as you mentioned. That's the place you need to be on. First, to think about their qualities, their strength, who they are, what do they bring, what do they bring that others don't have? And emphasize that on LinkedIn instead of just writing a laundry list, a boring laundry list of what their role is. Bring
yeah,
your own strengths and your unique personality and what you bring and what you have done, and try to think outside the box of what are different things you can do, because a lot of times we limit ourselves in our heads, right? I can only be XYZ, whatever your role is at right now. But if you try to ask, and you can do a cool exercise in asking some friends, family, and colleagues to give you three strengths and three areas they feel like you can improve on. And just doing that exercise can help you just open up to possibilities to figure, oh, people tell me I'm really a great listener. I'm a great communicator, whatever that may be. So maybe I can go to management, maybe I can work with clients. So try to open your mind up to possibilities and be curious about what's out there, because the world is getting smaller. Maybe not physically, but opportunities are out there. And now people can work, as you said, they can work remotely. That brings a lot of new opportunities.
I love it. One of that getting feedback aspect. I see a lot of people. They believe they understand what their strengths and their weaknesses are, but they until you hear from others, right? Until other people have different observations of you. I remember I went through an exercise at a company that I worked for, and we had a 360 feedback. And I knew what my boss thought of me. I was doing great. I knew what my team thought of me. I was doing great. I was like, okay, I'm rocking it. I'm doing excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 360 went peer to peer, right? And my peers didn't think so great of me because I wasn't working that peer relationship. I wasn't communicating with them. I didn't care what they had going on. I was just rocking my little world, right? which doesn't make me a really great team player on a leadership team. So then I realized, oh, I was totally blind to this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then I had to make a conscious effort to say, hey, my peer level is very important to me. So that 360 feedback, right? I love asking for three strengths and three improvement opportunities because I think so many times we think we know, and then when you hear it from other people, you're like, whoa, I didn't know that. I was blind to
Yeah, usually we don't know.
that. Awesome. Um, it, Folks oftentimes talk in their career, they're so focused on getting a promotion. It, and that's a good thing, right? That creates them to have a good work ethic. That usually creates for them to work very hard because they want to get to the next level. What are maybe some tips on how to get a promotion at work?
Yeah. So, first of all, as you mentioned, I mean, I think it starts with understanding what you want. You need to know what you want first. That's step one. Step two is you need to make sure your manager knows what you want and understand it. Because a lot of times people think that, and I used to think that, by the way, oh, I'll just do a good job and someone will notice it and I'll be promoted. Theoretically, maybe it should be that way, but it doesn't. Usually, it doesn't happen that way. So, you need to be very deliberate. You need to talk with your manager, tell them about your intentions, and build a plan with them. It's part of their responsibility as a manager. A lot of people don't realize that, but actually, your manager is responsible for your career growth. They need to invest in you. It's not just about you producing work for them and sharing status updates with them. They need to be there for you and they need to help you build a plan. If they cannot help you, you need to figure out who else can. Maybe it's your HR business partner. Maybe it's someone else in your company. I would and ask for feedback, but real one, not like you're doing great. I was always dissatisfied when I was heard you are doing great. Why? Because it's always good to hear you're great, but it doesn't tell me anything. What does
Mm-hmm.
it mean? I always wanted specific feedback that I can actually do something with. What is missing for me to get to the next level? What do I need to do? What am I not doing? What am I not doing good enough? You need to have a plan, and your manager has to be clear
I
to
love it.
you on what is that you are missing. It also has to be be clear to them. Sometimes it doesn't, by the way, and that's where the challenges begin, and that's where you need sometimes to involve others.
It's a great advice to involve others, right? You mentioned early on that you do some mentoring, and still do to this day, right? Having anyone who listens to this podcast knows that I'm a huge fan of having a mentor. That doesn't have to be somebody who's a superior to you or such. It can be somebody who just looks objectively at your career and your what you're doing and your skills and can provide some guidance. Um, Oftentimes in a promotion situation, a mentor can really help you objectively navigate that because you're so deep in the day to day and maybe so deep in the, oh, my manager doesn't understand me. I'm trying to communicate this, that, and the other. And a mentor or a career coach can often help you get the words right and have a better communication or a better conversation with your leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about building a plan and taking leadership. And by leadership, I don't mean necessarily being a manager. No matter
Mhm.
what you are, you may be the most junior person in the company or very senior. At any level that you are, always think what is expected of me from in the next level and what are the things I can start doing today to show that I'm capable, because typically what happens, people are promoted when they already prove that they operate in the next level. at least in some of the aspects. Typically, that's what happened. So you need to always think about not just fulfilling your current role duties, but think about what is expected from the next level. And it doesn't mean you take extra work. It's just the way you think. If the next role requires you to be more strategic, see how you can think more strategically or who can help you. If your next role needs you to be a better communicator, to work better with peers, how can you do that? When you show you are
Uh,
capable, you will be promoted. And obviously, you ask for that and you build a plan, it will happen.
I love it. I think sometimes I always throw in, you have to be somewhat patient. And let me qualify that because I don't mean like just sit there forever waiting for a promotion, but understand kind of the business side of it. I had a great leader that said, I had a team of about 175 people. And I said, "Oh, this person, they're ready to be promoted. They've met all the qualifications, right? They're performing at the next level." And the senior VP at the time, he said, "That's awesome, Michael, that you've developed them to that position and they're ready." He said, "Just because they're ready doesn't mean that the organization has a need for that person to be at that level, right?" So sometimes people get frustrated and they say, "I've done everything." Okay, well, sometimes it just might be a little bit of bad luck that you've done everything, but you're in a role or on a team where that next level is full, right? And your manager can't promote you even if they wanted to.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
sometimes you have to look, within your own company and say, okay, well, maybe I need to move to this other team and do something a little different for a promotion opportunity.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to look sideways. Sometimes people have to eventually, even if they don't want to switch jobs because they figure that they reach their max potential at a specific employer. Again, as you said, everything is good. They are doing good. The company is doing good, but they just don't have the opportunity for them.
Right, right. Um, we talked a little bit about the importance of hiring, right? To get the right people to start building a diverse and inclusive culture. Once they make that hiring decision, there's new employees and onboarding. I think that's such a critical moment, right? It affirms to that employee that they made the right choice. If they're supported in a good onboarding program, um, that used to be so easy, right? It used to be like, hey, I'm going to meet them in the parking lot. I'm going to walk them into the building. I'm going to show them where the restrooms are, the cafeteria. I'm going to sit with them all day. It's going to be great. We're going to go to lunch. We're going to go to cocktails. It used to be this hands-on, I'm your buddy kind of thing. And now we're all in this remote world, right? Now we're all like, so maybe you schedule a Zoom and then like everybody, it's tough, right? Leading and managing in this new world is difficult. Maybe talk a little bit about some of your experience with onboarding new employees and the importance.
Absolutely. And by the way, Michael, I don't know if saying difficult is the word I would choose. It's different. And it's more challenging in some ways for sure.
Perfect.
In creating the personal communication, no, no doubt that meeting in person is the best. And going for cocktails or doing something together is the best. But onboarding can be done very well also remote. I couldn't believe it, but I've seen it. So you just need to be very deliberate, and that's where processes comes in handy. And I'll be honest, I'm not a very process oriented person. However, I found out that when onboarding people and hiring, by the way, also in hiring, you have to have, especially when it's done remotely, you need to be very organized, thoughtful, and have a process. How do you onboard whatever the role is to your team? And it depends on the role, right? If I hired a manager to my team, I will have a different onboarding plan than if I hired an individual contributor to my team. And I used to create to people I hired, and people that reported to me did the same for people they hired, a very thorough onboarding plan. Typically we did a 30, 60, 90 goal setting. And there is a reason behind that, because onboarding is not just your first week, it's your first quarter. And actually, in the first week, usually it's the honeymoon phase. Everyone is super happy and excited, and I started a new job and I can update my LinkedIn, and people are usually very excited. But what happens? And I'm not expected to do anything this week, just meet people. But then what happens? Oh, I have to start actually producing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the people and all that. So you need to build a plan that will be beyond just the first week. And we'll give them some milestones. And you work with them on defining those milestones. And it's not just for you to see that they are a fit and they are productive, but it's also for them. It gives them clarity. What is expected from them in the next 30, 60, and 90 days. Who is important for them to meet? Prioritize. They cannot meet everyone, but who is the most important for them to meet in the first week, in the first 2 weeks, in the first month, and so forth.
I love what you said about it's important for them. So many times I see companies, they onboard folks and they don't really have a plan, right? And that employee comes in and they're kind of lost, right? Those employees that you hire, they want to do good, right? They want to be successful. But if you don't tell them what that looks like or what you expect from them, it becomes very uncomfortable for them, right? I've seen a lot of places where, especially in healthcare, this happens. You finally get that nurse. That nurse comes in. You don't have a really great onboarding program. Nurses are producers, right? They want to get in and start contributing, start doing their mission, right? Caring for patients, healing the sick. And if you just have them like, oh yeah, we forgot you were coming. We didn't get your ID set up, so you can't log in. Oh, we don't have a computer for you. We don't have this. We don't have that. I've seen a lot of turnover within the first 2 weeks for companies that don't have that process that you spoke about. That says, oh, it's a very different experience when there is that rigor around the processes. That employee comes in, their ID is already set up beforehand. They already have access to their email. There's already welcome emails and meetings scheduled for them to go meet people. They have access to all the systems they're supposed to need. They have a coach and a mentor that's going to guide them in, right? That's a very different process, and they feel very welcomed and very included. And right out of the gate, they're going to be productive and contributing, versus without that process, there's just frustration on both sides. And people are like, what did I get myself into, and how do I get out of here? And I guarantee a lot of them leave very shortly after, as soon as they can find something else.
Absolutely, yeah. And another thing that for some people, we used to put a buddy, basically to match them with a buddy that will be working side by side them. Usually it happens with people that are more junior, that need more support. And you need to be very, very conscious about it, because think about when someone is starting out, maybe it's their first job or second job, and they are starting remote, they're very lonely. It's not the same as if they are in the office and they can just walk to someone's desk and ask for help. And I found out that assigning them a buddy, someone they can always reach out to, makes the process much more comfortable for them. Even if this buddy doesn't have all the answers, it's a super connector for them. This buddy can connect them to whoever they need to. So they don't feel alone, they don't feel lost.
Great. I think, with these remote teams, especially hiring a remote employee, right? I've now seen people that have hired people they haven't met physically in person, right? They have Zoom interviews and such. They hire them, they onboard them, they send them their laptop and their IDs and such, and they literally are now working for a company and they haven't met anybody, right? They've never met one physical person other than just on Zoom and such. So it's becoming pretty common now, especially with remote teams. And we've talked and dabbled around building relationships and making that person uh, feel included. I talk a lot about trust and the importance of trust. Um, how do you build trust with these remote employees that are now part of these teams?
Yeah, that's a good point. Building trust for me is, first of all, being transparent and being interested in them. Listen, really listen, and care for people who work with you. And you need to adjust yourself to each individual differently. Each person is different, therefore, you need to work with them differently. You need to understand who they are, what are their core values, and what's the best way to work with them. For example, some people really needs more attention. So maybe you need to reach out to them once in a day or so, check how they're doing, meet with them more often. Some people prefer to be left alone and just check in once a week, or, as I told you, some people like even less than that. So you need to adjust how you work with who you work.
I I love that. I think so many times, what's becoming clearer to me, right? The more I have the opportunity to lead teams and such, is that individuality is so important. And I love what you said as a leader, to adjust yourself to who you have the opportunity to lead and to meet them kind of in their own space. I think, when you come out of school, maybe with an MBA or such, right, you're taught like, this is leadership, this is management, and you tend to be one style fits all when you go out there, and it doesn't work well. It might work well for one or two people, but other people are left with, oh, my leader doesn't understand me. Oh, they didn't hear me, because you're not flexing and adapting your communication styles. Um, I loved the words that you used to describe that, because you said transparent, listen, and care. Um, which to me, right, if somebody's being transparent and honest with me, if they're listening to what I'm saying, and they truly care, then I'm vested in that relationship with that person that's now vested in me, right? And we start having a real relationship and a real conversation. And it seems so simple, but I think that you don't go to MBA's school, right? And I have one of those silly degrees, but and go Sun Devils, ASU. But they don't teach you that, right? They don't say, oh, you have to be transparent, you have to listen, and you should care. It's such a cool reminder, because I think just those simple things create that bond between two people, right? It works in relationships. It works in leading people. It's this kind of secret sauce between two people.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to emphasize that it's not that simple. It really depends on the people. And usually what happens when you work with someone who is very different than you, and I had that opportunity to work with people who are very different than me. For example, I'm very transparent. What you see is what you get. Sometimes direct, in a respectful way, but I'm pretty direct. And I worked with a person who was a closed book, and it drove me nuts. But it was hard. And it took me about a year to get to a level of relationship that I wanted. But I acknowledged that there is a difference, that this person is not me, and that's okay. And I had to learn how to work with him. What does he value? What he needs from me? What I need from him? What's the most effective way to work with him? So it's very important to get into their head, to get to know them and understand and ask. You can simply ask, what do you need from me? how you best like to communicate. Some people are very detailed oriented. Some people like visual, so you need to get to know the people you work with and how to work with them most effectively.
I love it. When I tell all my guests, right, I cyber stalk them. So on your website, one of the things I love when I have guests that have things on their website that folks can get to know the guest a little bit better, right? So on your website, I love this tip of the month, right? Tip of the month, turn on creator mode in LinkedIn so you can start posting content and brand yourself as a subject matter expert. What is creator mode? Just for the folks that might not know, I personally know what it is. I create enough content that people are like, oh my gosh, stop creating content. But for people that are like, oh, I'd love to write an article on LinkedIn or something, what is creator mode?
Yeah, so creator mode is something somehow new. It's not new, but it's somehow new. It's about a year old, I think. And it allows you to focus your profile around content. So LinkedIn will organize how your profile is viewed differently than someone who is just have the standard profile. For example, first of all, the automatic action on your profile for someone that views it will be follow rather than connect. It will show the featured section before the experience section. The focus on your profile is more around your content versus your experience. And it's maybe not the best for everyone, but definitely if you want to build a strong brand, you need to be active. You need to post content, whether it's your own or share others. You don't have to all the time post your own content. And LinkedIn will highlight that. So that's kind of on the
I
tip
love
of
it.
the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. And then the other thing that you had out there, you scroll down under guests, download 5 simple tips you can implement in less than an hour that will dramatically change how your profile looks and improve your visibility in LinkedIn searches. So lots of cool content where you're just kind of like, hey, get to know me a little bit and what I do, and here's some tips. It's a nice way for people to come onto your website, see a little bit about what you are about and the coaching and such. So if those of you again following home, the link will be down below. It's about halfway down the page, but it's cool when people do that and they put things of value, tips and such out there for folks to have.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if folks want to connect with you, the best way is probably the website, right? There's information about your services and such out there.
Yeah, definitely. Through my website, they can also reach out on LinkedIn. It's the same, Limor Bergman. You can find me either on limorbergman.com or on LinkedIn/Limor Bergman. Both works.
Awesome. Well, we've covered a whole bunch about personal brand, culture, careers, being a leader in technology, managing remote teams. All of that has been very, very cool. Lots of great tips. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for helping people, become better and achieve their goals. And for what you're doing. I love the pivot in your career, right? However that happened, it's awesome to see you doing something that you're very passionate about and helping others.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure being here with you, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you.